Current and former Baltimore Ravens and NFL stars sounded off on Lamar Jackson losing the MVP to Josh Allen. We talk about what was said, the conversation around the award, what happened, as well as voters revealing why they voted against Lamar. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day as well. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel. Also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe. We're a 5-day-a-week daily Ravens podcast. So news, analysis, updates. We have everything for your Ravens every single weekday. Plus, we have bonus episodes that we do on the weekend. Sometimes we go live after every single Ravens game and every piece of Ravens big news, like we did last night when it was officially announced that Lamar Jackson did not win the MVP. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So yes, the news, everybody knows it. Lamar Jackson loses out on the MVP award to Josh Allen. And, it almost feels like a here we are again moment where we spent so much time and energy talking about the MVP award for months on this show. I mean, everybody did, right? And then we kind of put it in the rearview mirror. Regular season ends. Okay, it's done. Votes are in. Playoff time. Ravens lose to Buffalo. Buffalo loses to Kansas City. And then here we are having those same conversations. People calling this a pretty historic MVP upset. Definitely one of the biggest MVP shockers in recent years because of the fact that, first of all, Lamar Jackson was a first-team All-Pro and did not win the MVP. That has happened in different ilks before, but really, look, you have to go back. Peyton Manning was first-team quarterback. Adrian Peterson won MVP, and then you want to go to quarterback. You go back even further. But there's a lot to dive into because current and former Ravens and NFL stars sounded off on Lamar losing the MVP. So we'll talk about what they had to say, their messages. Then we'll also talk about some of the voters, which sides they picked, and actually some have already revealed why they chose Josh Allen over Lamar Jackson, despite choosing him as a first-team All-Pro. Lamar Jackson, that is a first-team All-Pro. Then we'll move away from the MVP talk because, again, I know it was exhausting during the season. Already feels super exhausting now. And again, this will pass over in, I guess, a couple days, at least the big juicy MVP immediate conversation, but it'll probably pop up over the course of the offseason at times. Move away from it here, though. Derrick Henry had a message to the Ravens, which was awesome. And that was a really positive moment and a pretty bad Ravens night overall. So let's just dive into it here. Current and former Ravens, NFL stars, they did sound off about Lamar losing the MVP. And I just want to say this. It's not about Josh Allen winning the award, right? This is not anything against Josh Allen. I will say Josh Allen had a great season. Now, my MVP pick was Lamar Jackson. I believe he was the deserving guy here. But this isn't about Josh Allen. I'm not here to talk bad about Josh Allen. But it's about Lamar losing. It's not about Josh Allen winning. That is where this shock comes in, where the sounding off comes in. It's not sounding off against Josh winning. It's sounding off against Lamar losing. Because as I've said, any season, Josh has this year and Lamar is not there. If Josh has this year last season, Josh Allen wins the award. But Lamar had the season he had. It was a historic season. So I think one of the big viral clips going around right now is Shannon Sharpe and Chad Ochocinco or Chad Johnson on, they have their thing going on with Nightcap, and they were doing an event, and the news came across as they were doing the event. And literally Shannon said that he was in shock. Chad Johnson had some more colorful language than that, but expressed, his, I'd say, disappointment that Lamar did not win the award. He said, hell nah, and some profanity in there as well. But their argument was some of the stuff that I said on the show last night live, and I'll say it again here, and everybody's saying it. It's, well, Lamar wins first team All-Pro. These are the same voters And then, what was it? 7 of them turn around and vote for Josh Allen as the MVP. That's the interesting thing here, where I think Lamar got 30. Yeah, he got 30 first team votes for AP first team all pro, and then he got 23 first place votes for MVP. So 7 people turn around and said, well, Lamar is the first team AP all pro, but he's not the MVP. So that's what Shannon and Chad Ochocinco were discussing, is what a lot of other people were discussing as well. Torrey Smith, he had some words, and Torrey echoes a lot of the same things I said. And I agree with what Torrey said, where it is not about Josh here. It was more about Lamar losing there. He said he wants Josh to enjoy his new achievement, so he stopped tweeting about it after a while. But he did say, look, having a top 5 QB season ever and not winning MVP is wild. And then he said, I'm not going to go on a hater rant, though. Josh Allen had a great season and is a good dude. That's the thing here, where we can acknowledge all of the stuff that Josh Allen did this season. But Lamar is going to come out of this thing. Obviously, he's a first-team All-Pro, but he leaves here with no awards. Like, Lamar didn't get an award for his incredible historic season. First team All-Pro, yes, but Offensive Player of the Year went to Saquon Barkley. MVP went to Josh Allen. It's not about them winning. They both had great seasons. They both definitely deserved it. And I think everybody realized kind of as this process was happening, and like, yeah, if you're talking about Offensive Player of the Year and MVP, 2 awards for 3 guys. One of those guys was not going to get their name called last night. I just don't think a lot of people expected it to be Lamar. Torrey Smith also said, because he's down in New Orleans right now, Torrey said, you should have heard the reaction from all the former players when they said Lamar didn't win. Folks were shocked. That seems to be the consensus here. It's like people are shocked Lamar did not win this award, with the statistical advantages he had, with the fact that the Ravens and Bills were only separated by 1 seed and 1 win, and some of the other things that Lamar had in terms of strength of schedule, DVOA, a lot of things that did favor Lamar. It's not saying Josh didn't have anything in his favor. Quite the opposite. Josh had a lot going for him, but I just think Lamar had more, and that's the thing. So I know a lot of people are calling it a pity MVP award, and, you know, the fact that Lamar had 2, Josh had none, so they kind of had to craft their narrative. I put out a tweet last night where it seemed pretty obvious Josh was going to win the award. Signs were there when CBS Sports, who went on a full Josh Allen tour for MVP, put out that interception and called it an arm punt. So that's the thing. And even some current Ravens got in on this action. Darius Washington took to Twitter after the award was announced and put a bunch of, you know, sleeping ZZZZ emojis, which, hey, maybe he was just sleepy getting ready for bed. Who knows? Or maybe he was saying that the league was sleeping and these voters were sleeping on Lamar Jackson. So how this thing actually finished up, we do know exactly not only just how close the race was, which we'll get into right now, but actually who voted for who, which we'll get into a little bit in the second part of the show. I think it was pretty interesting because, I mean, look, it was absolutely crazy, the fact that, first of all, well, for Offensive Player of the Year, Saquon got 35 votes, Lamar got 12 votes. So I feel like some people who voted for Lamar for Offensive Player of the Year, I don't know if this is the right phrasing, but I guess felt less guilty maybe about voting for Josh Allen as MVP over Lamar, because they might say in their mind, oh, well, I'm giving Lamar this achievement, so I'm not going to give him the other achievement. And there are, I don't know, the way the MVP award thing, like how it's interpreted, how people actually view MVP versus Offensive Player of the Year and AP stuff, all of that. There's no clear definition, but apparently, from what I've seen, people view it as, well, the AP All-Pro is a stats thing, and the MVP is, you know, who's the best player. Well, I think Lamar, in my opinion, deserved both. But, you know, I guess at this point, it doesn't really matter. So Josh was very complimentary of Lamar during his speech. You know, made sure the first thing he said when he got up there, well, at least one of the first things he said when he got up there was, you know, acknowledging Saquon, Lamar, Jared Goff, everybody But the way that it worked was Josh Allen got 27 first place votes, 22 second place votes, and 1 third place vote. That's 383 points. Lamar Jackson got 23 first place votes, 26 second place votes, and 1 fourth place vote. That fourth place vote, by the way, we do know who it is. And we'll get into that in the second part of the show because we will go and talk about who was on Lamar's side and who was on Josh's side. But that was 362 points. So 383 compared to 362, a very, very, very tight MVP race. And again, we'll probably hear more because this only happened as I'm recording this a couple of hours ago. We will probably hear more current and former players kind of sound off on this whole thing. There's been a lot of support for Josh, and Josh does deserve support during this. Again, it's not about Josh winning. It's about Lamar losing. That I think is what has shocked the NFL world, what shocked Shannon Sharp, Torrey Smith, kind of giving an insight about what other former players are feeling about Lamar losing the award. So it is unprecedented where you have to go back in time a decent amount of years to find the last time that something like this has happened. And even in some instances, it has never happened. So Josh Allen wins the award. He had a great season, as did Lamar. Both guys neck and neck for this award, as it should have been. I think that we should have had that conversation and propped both guys up. The conversation did become pretty toxic over the course of the year, but kind of went away for a little bit. Now we're back, and then of course after probably a couple days, maybe a week or two, it will go away. Coming up with the second part of the show, we will talk about who voted for who, as well as some of the voters who voted for Josh Allen as an MVP, but voted for Lamar Jackson as the first team All-Pro, revealing why. So be sure to stay tuned. We'll have to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is sponsored by Betterhelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags we should avoid, but what if we focused more on identifying the positive signs in our relationships, those green flags? If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them, actively practice them, and even embody that green flag energy yourself. Whether you're dating, married, building a friendship, or just working on yourself, therapy can help you form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills. It empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. Therapy provides tools for managing conflict in ways that strengthen your connections rather than break them down. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapists, you can do so at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this Friday edition of the show. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form wherever you get your podcast. We do bring you 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens coverage in season, in the off season. We are a year-round Ravens podcast, so we'll be getting into some draft stuff coming up next week. Obviously, free agency kicks off soon, and then the draft will actually begin a couple months from now, which is crazy. And then before you know it, we'll be back to OTAs, back to minicamp, and all of a sudden we'll be doing this thing all over again. So be sure you keep it locked in here on Locked On Ravens. But we do know Lamar Jackson, not the MVP. Josh Allen does take home the award. Josh had a great year. So did Lamar. So did Saquon Barkley. A lot of deserving candidates this year. Obviously, Josh was the one that came out on top. A little bit of a shocker to a lot of people based off of how the AP vote went with All-Pro, which we'll get to in just a couple of minutes. But I first want to talk about the voters who voted for Josh Allen and who voted for Lamar Jackson, because I know a lot of people wonder, okay, well, who has MVP votes? Who voted for who? So there was a list put together, and it was who voted for Lamar in first place and who voted for Josh Allen in first place. So on Lamar Jackson's side, names like Aaron Schatz, who we had here on Locked On Ravens last year, he was the one voter who did not vote for Lamar last year. He voted for Lamar this season. Dan Pompey, Diana Rossini, Doug Farrar, Greg Auman. You have Kay Adams, Mike Florio, which I know might surprise some people. Mike Florio actually kind of soft launched that he was voting for Lamar this year, although we do know he and Lamar, or at least he himself, Mike Florio, has not gotten on Lamar Jackson's good side. Other ones who voted for Lamar: Mike Jones, Mike Sando, Mike Tirico, Mina Kimes, Nate Davis, Teddy Bruschi, Tom Brady, which I know means a lot to Lamar and to a lot of Ravens people, and Tony Dungy as well. On the Josh Allen side, you have people like Adam Shine, Ben Volin, Chris Sims, Dan Orlovsky, Emmanuel Acho, Jim Miller. Remember that name, Jim Miller. You also have Jonathan Jones, Lindsay Jones, Michael Silver, Pete Prisco, Rich Gannon, etc. So those aren't all of the voters, not all of them. I just wanted to read off some of them. But Jim Miller, we can go back to Jim Miller for a second here. He was the one who voted for Lamar in 4th place. Ahead of him, he had Josh Allen, he had Saquon Barkley, and he had Joe Burrow. Look, I understand if you think Joe Burrow had a great season, 1,000%. I believe he did too. Saquon Barkley had a heck of a year also. But look, putting Lamar in 4th, I'm very curious as to why Jim Miller felt the need to do that, especially when there was so much conversation about how the Bills were the 2 seed, the Ravens were the 3 seed, and that was a key argument made against Lamar Jackson when Joe Burrow didn't even make the playoffs. So that's a whole different conversation. But Jim Miller of SiriusXM, he was a former quarterback. He was drafted by the Steelers, so maybe that's why. Who knows? No, I'm kidding. But played 2 years with the Steelers and a couple more years after that with the Bears. He had 36 career touchdowns, 31 career interceptions. So he is the one that put Lamar in 4th place. But there were other people who voted, because again, these are the same voters. They are the AP voters. They vote for All-Pro. They vote for MVP, the awards. Some of these voters turned around and voted for Lamar as the first team All-Pro, but then went and voted for Josh Allen as the MVP. One of those was Lindsay Jones of The Ringer, and she put together a very comprehensive article once the decision dropped that Josh Allen was the MVP. And she said, hey, I was one of these people who did this, and she explained why. And I want to give Lindsay a lot of credit here because she was able to articulate her points very well. And, you know, even though I don't agree with some of her points, I think she put it together really well. And I give her a lot of credit for putting it out there. So what she ended up saying was that she went back and forth on this for a while. She was very undecided. She said that she went back and reviewed film a bunch and, you know, talked herself in circles and, you know, confided in people around her. The thing that she said, though, was that she doesn't like the fact that the MVP award is the best quarterback award. It's kind of become that in the past decade, she said. And for Lamar and Josh Allen, it coming down to 2 quarterbacks, she said that she believed both were deserving of the league's highest individual honor. An MVP is not strictly an award for the best quarterback, so voting one of them for All-Pro didn't mean they automatically had to be the MVP. And she mentioned that the phrasing of most valuable is extremely vague. That's a topic of conversation that came up a bunch over the course of this process. Emmanuel Acho was a key driver in that, I think, but others also had that same point. She said the MVP to her, it's an open to narrative considerations, players' career arc, roster decisions made around him, expectations for a particular season. And I think when she said that, it was kind of like, okay, roster decisions made around him. You can kind of infer that that was about Stephon Diggs and the fact that, you know, even expectations for a particular season, the Bills weren't really expected to do what they did. They had a great season relative to what a lot of people thought that they were going to do. So she essentially says, quote, splitting my ballot was my way of acknowledging that Jackson played quarterback better than anyone this season, while Allen was the defining and, yes, most valuable football character of the regular season. She mentioned Allen's highlight plays, his passing to receiving touchdown against San Francisco, 4th down touchdown run against Kansas City. And that obviously was a big one I've mentioned before as well. And also another one she mentioned was the rollout deep to Keon Coleman in that Detroit loss. I don't really know if we should highlight loss plays, but she did say that in her article, which, you know, that's her opinion. And I, again, appreciate her articulating it here for us to kind of dive down. She talked about stats a lot, mentioned that, you know, it wasn't Josh Allen's best statistical season and the shift in Buffalo's offense. They didn't need him to be a superhero, but Allen was super efficient. It was the most efficient version of Josh. And then at the end, she said, I understand that plenty of people will not agree with this decision-making process, including many of my peers and fellow voters. Maybe some of them felt voting for Jackson was an easy call, and I get it. He was electrifying and took his already incredible game to a new level. His stats are undeniable. I'm not sure there would have been an entirely satisfying outcome, though I suppose it feels fitting that an MVP race that felt so tight during the season remained so until the very surprising end. So again, I give Lindsay a lot of credit for putting her points out there, and I think she did a good job of explaining why she did what she did. And I understand why she voted for Josh over Lamar. Do I agree with everything? Of course not. I think that Lamar was the MVP. I think that when you talk about, well, if Lamar Jackson played better quarterback than anyone this season, how does that make Josh, when you talk about most valuable, are we putting more stock in the fact that the whole Josh did more with less narrative? And even so, where was that energy for Lamar when Josh Allen did have Stephon Diggs and did have Gabe Davis and all these other players, first round picks? And look, I agree that Lamar had a better supporting cast this year than Josh Allen did. But again, Lindsay's point of view is just one, and I really do respect what she had to say. Now, again, I think that Josh Allen was a great player this season. He had an incredible year, and he should be super proud of what he did. And obviously the MVP award that he won will, that'll be a memory for him forever. And while Lamar doesn't have anything to commemorate this season with, Josh said in his post-game interview, it's the same thing post-game, like we're talking after a game, post-award interview. Lamar would have said the same thing. He said he would trade his MVPs for a Super Bowl, and he's ready to get back to work. It's a super high honor and something that we're going to look back on this season. And, was it an award where people felt like either giving him the AP, giving Lamar the AP, did it make it feel better if they were so split on the decision? Okay, well, we're going to give Lamar one and Josh Allen the other. I personally don't think it should work that way, right? I think, to me, it should be, well, if a guy deserves the award, the guy gets the award. I've been consistent on that forever, right? Forever. So with Lindsay's point, it was like, well, getting him the AP and then going over, and Josh Allen's the most valuable player. Is that the way that a lot of the other people who did that think? Could be yes, could be no. Lindsay put her points out there, and I'm sure we're going to hear others as the day goes on today, maybe tomorrow, maybe on Monday. I don't know. But Josh had a case. Lamar had a case. I thought Lamar's case was better, but at the end of the day, the voters spoke. And I think that a lot of people are calling for a kind of reevaluation of how the voting process works, maybe even a reevaluation of who gets to vote. So we'll kind of see, but disappointing end for Lamar to a great season for him. I know people are trying to bring up the playoff loss. This is a regular season award. It's a regular. I literally entertain nothing. I entertain nothing that talks about the playoffs in these conversations, right? Literally does not matter. If there's preconceived bias or notion about the playoffs that goes into a voter's factor of the award, they shouldn't be voting for the award. They shouldn't be voting for the award because it is strictly on that season. If you want to bring up what happened last year versus this year, it is two things. If people can redefine what the MVP looks like in terms of what's the definition of valuable, what does this mean? What does that mean? Every year the criteria changes for the MVP. We're going to have a whole different criteria next season. And then people are going to try to compare it to 2024 and be like, oh, well, this is what happened with Josh and Lamar. It's all different. It is all in its own thing. And I think people just get so caught up in that. So, again, you look at the stats. We'll dive into a little bit of that in the final part of the show as well. And talking about Derrick Henry's message to the Ravens, because in a night that didn't really go very well for Baltimore, that was the pretty lone bright spot. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. And the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least two players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick, and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board and selecting more for Travis Kelce on receiving yards and more for Patrick Mahomes passing yardage. What I love most, fast, safe withdrawals when I win my cashes in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab to tail any of the Super Sweet Millie winners big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you still on this Friday edition of the show. Appreciate everybody for tuning in here. We're going to get into our final thoughts on the MVP conversation for today, and we'll get into some of the stuff I said on the live. And by the way, if you want to go watch that live, we had it about 11 p.m. last night. You can see what all the community was saying, who was in there. Be sure to go back and watch that, and also hit that like and subscribe button in video form. Turn notifications on in video form as well, so you know when we go live and put out new content. But also, you can rewatch those lives after in video or listen to them when they are posted in audio form, just about an hour or so after they begin. So follow along in audio form as well. We have a great audio community too, and that's building up each and every single day. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us in audio form. Now, we'll take one last look at Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Those guys' stats, 2024. Talked about this on the live show. Lamar Jackson had better completion percentage, more passing yards per attempt, pass yards per game, pass touchdowns, less interceptions, better passer rating, rush attempts, rush yards per attempt. He won the head-to-head battle. The only thing that Josh Allen had better than Lamar Jackson was rushing touchdowns. So to me, a lot of people will cry stats for 2023. Lamar, Dak, I know that's the big conversation there. Josh wasn't involved in the conversation last year because of his turnovers, but my argument is that with eye test, Lamar Jackson was the best player in the league last season. He was, and it wasn't that close in my opinion. I think that Lamar and Josh were 1-2 this year in terms of best player in the league. I thought Lamar was 1 and Josh was 2, and it was pretty close. Lamar 1, Josh 2. I thought both guys had great seasons. So if you want to do 2023 to 2024, that's where it's different for me, where the criteria does change on an MVP every season, like what that award actually does mean. So again, I'm not trying to take away from what Josh did this season. I'm truly not. I think Josh is an incredible player. I love watching Josh. He has so many incredible moments, and he had a lot of those that helped his MVP case this year, like we talked about in the second part of the show, 100%. But I don't think that one more win, one more division spot, or one more seeding spot, and the whole conversation of like, yeah, supporting cast is a little worse than Lamar Jackson's was. The expectations thing certainly does play a part in everything, and I understand that. Baltimore is expected to be a Super Bowl contender, in Buffalo not so much. But still, I don't think that outweighs things like strength of schedule, where Lamar had the 5th hardest strength of schedule this season. The divisions were different. I mean, obviously, Baltimore has to go through Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and obviously Cleveland's not that big of a deal, right? But Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, and then the Steelers with that defense. The Bills, it's the Jets, the Dolphins, and the Patriots. Like, come on. We can be honest about that division. The Bills had the 19th strength of schedule this year. DVOA in terms of opponent, Lamar is 51%. That was tops in the league. Josh Allen, 26%. That was third. So, I mean, look, it's part of what the conversation is, where two guys to go neck and neck for an award both have great cases, and one comes out on top. Fortunately for Lamar, it wasn't him, but at the end of the day, I mean, he didn't even show up to the awards, so it's kind of like, okay, definitely kind of not a big deal to Lamar, but still, the award is done. Conversation's over. You know, we can now flip the script on it, although there are still going to be opinions that trickle out definitely over the course of the next couple of days. Probably do a bonus episode tomorrow because I'm sure we're going to hear a lot today. But Derrick Henry sent a message to the Ravens. I want to wrap up with this because let's end on a positive note, right? I mean, I think talking for a couple minutes about this maybe will provide us with a little bit of distraction from what the MVP award ended up being. And that is Derrick Henry, while at the awards, spoke to the Annie Rossini, who is obviously the senior insider for The Athletic. And she said that Derrick Henry told her that he wants to finish his career in Baltimore. And the quote that she gave was, "I want to retire a Raven." Now, a lot of Titans fans got super upset about this because they took it as Derrick Henry. He's not going to retire as a Titan. He's going to retire as a Raven. What I took this as is he, like literally what she said in the post, he probably just wants to finish his career in Baltimore. I don't know what team he's going to retire a member of. If he wins a Super Bowl with the Ravens, maybe he does retire a Raven. If he doesn't, he probably retires as a Titan. So I don't know, but it feels like Derrick Henry, and I mean, look, from this, definitely feels like Derrick Henry loves Baltimore, loves the team, loves Lamar Jackson, loves the culture in Baltimore as well. I mean, I think it's awesome to see how Derrick Henry in just 1 year, not even a year, 11 months, has embraced the city, embraced the organization so much. So that was a good positive thing that happened. We kind of, after this moment, maybe a little before, started to hear the rumblings of Josh winning the MVP. So it wasn't a very long-lived big positive message, but still, the message does remain the same. Derrick Henry's been posting some stuff on social media. He's ready for next season. He got very honest as well about how the season, how it ended, is going to play in his head. So Derrick's awesome. I mean, I think it's been absolutely seamless. And next season, year 2 of Lamar and Derrick Henry together, year 3 of Todd Monken's offense, hopefully we'll see an even bigger boost for both those guys next year. But that's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If we get more headlines, we're going to be talking about them tomorrow here on a bonus episode of Locked On Ravens. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form as well. And I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.